The film The Last Emperor was directed by the Italian director Bernardo Bertolucci. Through ingenious composition techniques, the film greatly facilitated the narrative, enabling the audience to deeply understand the development of the story, the emotions of the characters, and the changes in history. This video will specifically analyze how the composition in the film The Last Emperor promotes the narrative. The first point is to create an atmosphere and convey a sense of the times through composition. The film extensively employs symmetrical composition to depict scenes of the Forbidden City. The red walls and yellow tiles, along with the palaces and pavilions, present a symmetrical scene that fully showcases the solemnity and magnificence. It makes the audience feel as if they were transported to that feudal dynasty era, deeply experiencing the supreme power of the monarchy. At the same time, the different emotional atmospheres created by the composition also correspond to the storyline. When Puyi was at the center of power and had a relatively smooth life, the composition of the paintings was often more regular and expansive, giving a sense of stability and solemnity. However, when he encounters setbacks and loses power, the composition may become cramped and depressing.
No talking. Obey the gods.
Such as the composition style of a closed mirror, which highlights his inner pain, confusion, and helplessness, and enhances the emotional tension of the story. The second point is to create the character image through composition. The young Puyi, standing in the midst of the grand palaces, seemed insignificant. However, he was placed at the center of the frame. The center-oriented composition technique depicted Puyi's position as the emperor, yet his personal sense of powerlessness in the face of the imperial system and the historical type was showcased, thereby portraying the character. The contrastive composition also conveys the character of the figure. The characters on the rear sides are depicted as being in the background, arranged in a height difference, symbolizing the social hierarchy of the feudal society. The protagonist is placed in the middle and is surrounded, with his face covered by a large area of shadow, representing a character who is bound by the feudal society, forced to survive under duress and longing for freedom. The third point is to express the theme of the film through composition. The film frequently employs frame-style composition to symbolize and convey its theme. For instance, in the early part, the palace gate, the inner city walls, and even the dragon's throne made by the emperor all represent Puyi being confined and restrained by the imperial system and losing his personal freedom, thus expressing the theme of freedom in the film. Later on, when Puyi was imprisoned in the puppet Manchukuo, the same framework-style composition was used. The iron bars of the prison frame symbolized the oppression of power and his situation of losing freedom, deepening the film's theme about the personal fate being bound by the times and power. In addition, many scenes of the film also employed the rule of thirds composition, which helped convey the theme of the film. For example, in this scene, the position of the character was ingeniously placed at one-third of the frame. This composition style emphasized the insignificance and powerlessness of the character. In the historical tide, Puyi lived his entire life under the uncontrollable force of the times. The rule of thirds composition allowed the audience to more profoundly feel his insignificance and helplessness in the historical process, as well as the sorrow of his personal fate being swept along by the times. Thus, it highlighted the theme of the film regarding the relationship between the individual and history. In conclusion, the composition design of The Last Emperor goes beyond mere visual aesthetics and becomes the core driving force of the narrative. Through the central composition, the power order is presented. Through the framework composition, the concepts of restriction and freedom are metaphorically depicted. Through the symmetrical composition, the era and emotions are encoded, etc. The film constructs a multi-layered narrative space through visual composition language. This deep integration of composition and narrative not only immerses the audience in Puyi's legendary life, but also triggers profound reflections on history, power, and human nature.